Have you ever wondered about the true story behind the snake in the garden? For centuries, it's been a symbol of temptation, deceit, and the fall of humanity. But what if there's more to this ancient tale than meets the eye? Today we're going on a deep dive, peeling back the layers of myth, history, and psychology to uncover the hidden meanings behind one of the most famous stories ever told. This isn't just about a talking serpent and a forbidden fruit. This is a story about knowledge, free will, and the very essence of what it means to be human. So grab a seat and let's journey back to the very beginning, to a garden called Eden, and explore the real story of the snake. To truly understand this narrative, we first need to look at the world it came from. The story of Adam, Eve, and the serpent, as told in the book of Genesis, didn't appear in a vacuum. The ancient Near East was a melting pot of cultures, myths, and religions. Many of these neighboring civilizations had their own creation stories and their own powerful serpent deities. For example, in ancient Egypt, the serpent was a complex symbol. The cobra, or uraeus, was a protector of the pharaoh, a symbol of royalty and divine authority. Yet, the monstrous serpent Apep was the embodiment of chaos, an eternal enemy of the sun god Ra. Similarly, in Mesopotamian myths, serpents were often associated with healing, magic, and immortality. Think about the Epic of Gilgamesh, where a snake steals a plant that grants eternal youth. So, when the early Israelites were writing their sacred texts, they were surrounded by these powerful, often revered serpent figures. The Genesis author's choice to cast the serpent not as a god or a protector, but as a cunning deceiver, was a radical theological statement. It was a way of saying, our God is different. He is singular, and these other so-called deities are not what they seem. The serpent in Eden becomes a polemic, a direct challenge to the surrounding pagan beliefs. It strips the serpent of its divine status and recasts it as a creature, albeit a very clever one, that leads humanity away from God's simple command. This historical context is crucial. It transforms the story from a simple fairy tale into a profound declaration of a new kind of faith. Now let's look closely at the character of the serpent itself. The Hebrew word used is nakash. While often translated as serpent or snake, the root of this word has fascinating connotations. It can also be linked to concepts like divination, whispering, and shining. In fact, some scholars suggest Nakash could be interpreted as the Shining One. This adds a whole new dimension, doesn't it? It paints a picture not of a slimy, scaly creature, but perhaps of a radiant, charismatic being. The text describes it as more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. Crafty, or aram in Hebrew, is a word that can mean shrewd and prudent, not just deceitful. It has the same root word used later in the book of Proverbs to describe a sensible person. The serpent doesn't use force. It doesn't threaten. It uses questions and half-truths. It starts by asking Eve, did God really say, you must not eat from any tree in the garden? This is a classic manipulation tactic. It exaggerates the rule to make God seem unreasonable. Eve corrects the serpent, but the seed of doubt has been planted. Then, the serpent makes its boldest claim, you will not certainly die. For God knows that when you eat from it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God knowing good and evil. Notice the appeal. It's not about tasting a delicious fruit. It's about gaining wisdom, about elevation, about becoming more than what you are. The serpent tempts Eve with knowledge, enlightenment, and godlike status. It's a psychological game, and the serpent plays it masterfully. This brings us to the forbidden fruit itself. What was it? Tradition says it was an apple, but the Bible never specifies. It's simply the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This knowledge isn't just about telling right from wrong, like a child learning rules. The Hebrew phrase, tov wara, suggests a deeper, more experiential understanding of the full spectrum of existence. It's about knowing not just innocence, but also shame. Not just harmony, but also conflict. Not just life, but also mortality. Before eating the fruit, Adam and Eve were in a state of pure, childlike innocence. They were naked and felt no shame. They lived in perfect harmony with God and nature, without self-consciousness, fear, or anxiety. The serpent's promise was that this knowledge would make them like God, and in a way it was true. Their eyes were opened. They suddenly understood their own vulnerability, their nakedness. This new awareness brought shame and fear, forcing them to hide from God for the first time. They gained a new kind of consciousness, one that included self-awareness, moral ambiguity, and the heavy weight of making choices and facing consequences. So, was the serpent lying? Not entirely. It told a dangerous half-truth. They did gain a form of godlike knowledge, but it came at the cost of their innocence and their perfect communion with their Creator. They were expelled from the garden, not just as a punishment, but because they could no longer exist in that state of pure simplicity. So, what does this ancient story mean for us today, thousands of years later? The snake in the garden is a powerful metaphor that continues to resonate in our collective psyche. It represents the voice of doubt, the temptation to take shortcuts, and the allure of forbidden knowledge. In our own lives, we all face serpents. It could be the voice of ego telling us we know better than anyone else. It could be the temptation to compromise our values for personal gain. It could be the allure of a path that seems easy and glamorous but leads to unforeseen consequences. The serpent represents that part of our own nature and the external world that questions authority and pushes boundaries. Think about the rise of technology and artificial intelligence. We are constantly pursuing more knowledge, more power, striving to become like gods in our ability to shape our world and even our own biology. We are eating from a modern-day tree of knowledge, and our eyes are being opened to incredible possibilities. But with this new knowledge comes immense responsibility and new forms of shame and fear, concerns about privacy, ethical dilemmas, and the potential for misuse. The story of the serpent serves as a timeless cautionary tale. It reminds us that every piece of knowledge gained, every power acquired, comes with a consequence. It forces us to ask, what is the price of our ambition, and are we prepared to pay it? Beyond the cautionary tale, there's another more empowering way to see the story. The serpent, in a way, is the catalyst for the human journey. Without its intervention, humanity might have remained in a state of blissful ignorance in the garden forever. The fall from grace can also be seen as a fall upwards into consciousness, free will, and moral responsibility. It was the moment humanity began its long, difficult, but ultimately meaningful journey of growth, struggle, and discovery. It was the start of history, art, science, and civilization. The pain and struggle that follow the expulsion from Eden are the very things that define the human experience. It's through overcoming challenges, making mistakes, and learning from them that we find meaning and build character. Seen this way, the serpent isn't just a villain. It's an agent of change. Its temptation forced humanity to leave the nest, to grow up, and to start making its own choices. This doesn't excuse the deceit, but it reframes the outcome. The knowledge of good and evil, though painful, is what allows us to choose the good. Without the possibility of making the wrong choice, there is no virtue in making the right one. The story, then, is not just about a fall, but about the birth of human agency. It marks the moment we became active participants in our own destiny, for better or for worse. So, the next time you think of the snake in the garden, remember it's more than just a story about disobedience. It's a complex narrative about the clash of cultures in the ancient world. It's a psychological drama about the power of persuasion and the allure of forbidden knowledge. It's a philosophical exploration of consciousness, free will, and the price of wisdom. And ultimately, it's the symbolic beginning of our own human story, a story of struggle, growth, and the endless quest for understanding in a world full of both beauty and danger. The serpent may have been cast out, but its questions continue to echo in our minds, pushing us to explore, to learn, and to define for ourselves what it means to be good. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most fascinating tales. What are your thoughts on the serpent's role in the story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next journey into the stories that shaped our world. Thanks for watching.